Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Sayfie here with Chris Balas. We are sponsored by Lewis Jewelers. We're going to preview Michigan and Michigan State. So welcome to all the Michigan fans. Welcome to all the Michigan State fans too that are joining us and want to get a little bit of info on Michigan before the game. Let's get into this. I mean, it's one of the more anticipated Michigan State games that I can remember. It kind of has a similar feel to that 2015 game when Michigan State came in top 10. It was Jim Harbaugh's first year. Obviously, didn't go well in the last 10 seconds for Michigan. We don't have to get totally into that. We might lose some viewers that way, or maybe the Michigan State people will stick around. But, man, where does this rank for you, Chris, when you talk about – I mean, you're a lot older than me, no offense. But where does this rank for you when it comes to Michigan State games? Because, going through the history, and I did an article on, there's been, I think, 18 now top 25 games since 1950. Not a ton. It's not Michigan, Ohio State, but there's been some memorable ones when you look back. I guess where does this stack up going into the game in terms of anticipation?
Right up there with 1999, the Plaxico Burris game that we talked about in staff picks that I'm still getting angry hate mail from about. So it's just a game, folks. We're just having a little fun here. So, but great atmosphere. That was a game where if Tom Brady had played the whole game, then maybe Michigan wins that game. They threw Drew Henson in there and to start the second half, and they got behind big and then had to dig out of a hole and never really could come back. So, but to me, it has that same feel, that same vibe here. And I don't think either of these teams are as good as that 99 team on either side. Michigan State had some players on that team, and so did Michigan. Clearly, Tom Brady was splitting time, for crying out loud, with Drew Henson. So, but to me, that's where it is. These are top 10 programs, top 10 teams, I guess, this year. Not so sure that it's a real strong year or that either one of these is really a top 10 team. But the schedules, you play who's in front of you, and you're ranked where you're ranked, and your records is what it says it is. So we'll see what happens. But exciting. It should be a great atmosphere tomorrow.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about are these top 10 teams, but and it may not be a top 10 team in most years, but I think one of these teams has a shot to end up in the top 10 when you look at Penn State's fallen off a little bit, and it's relative to the other teams inherently being top 10. They've been two of the teams that have been able to kind of not have those stinker games. I know Ohio State, they lost to a good Oregon team, but you have Penn State losing to Illinois last week and all of that, and you've seen it around the country as well. Other teams dropping a game that they probably shouldn't. A&M's a good team, but Alabama lost this year a game that they were favored by double digits in. So it's kind of happening. You give both these teams credit for coming in and doing their job heading into this point. Halloween weekend, neither of them have lost. Offensively, for this game, a huge storyline coming off that Northwestern game is Cade McNamara, the Michigan passing offense. If the run game is stopped a little bit or slowed down, or let's say they can only muster up 120 yards or something like that, which is still a good amount of rushing production. But can Cade McNamara make some big throws to win this game? That's the question everybody's asking, and it kind of reminds me, coming off that Rutgers game just a few weeks ago, going into Wisconsin, it was the same thing. They're going to, stack the box or stop the run and, man up on the outside. Can he throw a guy open? Can he make a throw when a guy is open? And he was able to do that on a few, made some big plays and won that game. It's a different team, that they're facing this week because Michigan State has an offense and Wisconsin doesn't. But kind of what are your thoughts right now with the quarterback's, situation? Cade is under the microscope this week.
Yeah, let's be honest. First of all, that the Big Ten probably isn't as tough as we thought it was going to be. You look at the Wisconsin team, we thought they'd be better, and they still might win the West. That's the crazy thing about it. Iowa has no offense. They were number 2 in the country. With that offense, it was only a matter of time, probably. Purdue's up and down. Name me one team other than Ohio State. You got Michigan State in there that have beaten the teams in front of them, none of them which are very good, if we're being honest. So that's why I come back to, hey, are these really two top 10 teams? Well, they are, because they've won, the games in front of them. But we'll find out here in November, I guess, a little bit. There still aren't great teams on the schedule. They both play Ohio State, and then that's about it. So Michigan State goes to Purdue, which again has been up and down. So As far as the quarterbacks go, Cade McNamara showed me something at Wisconsin and at Nebraska that he doesn't get flustered. He had the one bad pick, obviously, at Nebraska. He came back and led them down to touchdowns. Everybody's going to say, oh, it was the running game, so on and so forth. The guy was under center. They put up 32 points at Nebraska. They put up 38 at Wisconsin. Michigan State does not have a defense that's as good as Wisconsin's or maybe even Nebraska's, if we're being honest. So everybody's thinking that Michigan's going to score 17 points here or be lucky to get to 20. I don't see it. And I think that there will be some opportunities against that pass defense. At the same time, you cannot go against your identity and what's been working to get you here. And I think that they'll be able to run the ball too. Again, Michigan State's front seven solid. They're not Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's is better. Michigan had 100, like you said, 120 yards, I think, against Wisconsin. So I would expect them to continue that. And there are variations. There are things that you can do in the running game. Everybody says, oh, run, 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 run. Well, there are things that you can do to mix it up in the run game as well. Maybe, show different blocking schemes, and maybe they're preparing for one thing. You throw something, a little misdirection at them or something like that. So I guarantee you that we aren't going to just see, the run up the middle, the same stuff that we've been seeing the last several weeks and going right according to tendency. That's not how it's going to be. So I think Michigan is as jacked up for this game as any in recent memory, based on what happened last year when they basically sleepwalked through that game and decided not to show up, just like the fans who weren't given the option. So to me, it won't be, if they do lose this game, it won't be because they come out flat, Clayton. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And yeah, poor performance by the fans last year, not coming out to the big house. I mean, that was ridiculous.
Damn
but
students.
I know, stupid student section. But
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with that. They've said all the right things all week. They said all the right things last year in that week, but they were behind a Zoom screen, and you couldn't get a vibe on that team. And obviously, there were some things going wrong behind the scenes. A lot of that has been cleaned up, as you can just see it. And winning helps so much with all that as well. And they're an undefeated football team right now with a lot of confidence, licking their chops, ready to go play their in-state rival. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win, but it's going to give them a hell of a shot. You're right about the run game. I would love to see them attack the edges a little bit more. That's kind of a way to beat Michigan State and gain some yards, something they didn't do last year if you want to compare to that game. And, man, you got to believe that Jim Harbaugh's in that offensive room when they're coming up with the game plan, making sure it's creative enough and they have enough counters to adjustments that Michigan State's going to make this year, because this is make or break to an extent for this coaching staff. I don't think anyone expected them to be undefeated coming into this game. I certainly didn't. I know you didn't. Even there's probably some people in the building that are a tad bit surprised. And this was always going to be the one coming into the year that everybody circled, that said, they have to win this one, and then we'll go from there. We didn't know Michigan State was going to be this good too. But in terms of the way this Michigan coaching staff is going to approach it, as well as the players, you got to believe that there's going to be some more creativity there, especially offensively after last year, which was just run up the middle and Joe Milton on third down, and it didn't work.
Yeah, and maybe who knows what they're going to do. And I will say this Michigan State team, it's funny because you got a chance to go 8-0 here. And if you'd looked at the beginning of the season and said, wow, you're 7-0 going into Michigan State, that means you've gotten by a great Washington team and a great Wisconsin team. And now you're playing a Michigan State team that probably stinks and was picked to finish last. Seasons don't play out the way that you always think they're going to. In fact, a lot of the times they don't. And prognosticators had no idea what to make of Michigan State because of the transfer portal and all the guys they got in there. Kenneth Walker has been a huge addition. And reading Paul Konendijk stuff with you from Spartan Mag, they've got starters everywhere that they got from the transfer portal. It's free agency, so it's getting harder and harder to predict. But, man, to get to 8-0 with a win over, a top 10 Michigan State team, we were talking to Nebraska guys who said, man, that's a paper tiger. Nebraska really feels like they had that game won and they should have won that game, and that was a team they should have beaten. And they thought that going in. That was the crazy part to me was, hey, they didn't see a whole lot. They said it's a nice football team, not a great football team, and probably shouldn't be 7-0. They should have at least one loss in the Nebraska game if you look at it. So, but they don't, and give them credit for that. So I think there's an opportunity here because if you get to 8-0, you're probably going to beat Indiana, right? You're at 9-0, and then you've got a Penn State team that's down and a Maryland team that you better beat. You've got a great opportunity here, and people don't want to hear this, but even if you lose on Saturday, It's going to put a damper on the season clearly, but you're still in it. You still have an opportunity to go into that Ohio State game if you take care of business, with an opportunity probably to win the Big Ten East. I don't think Michigan State's going to go undefeated. I don't know how the tiebreaker would play out from there, but they've got a couple games coming up yet too that they've got to win, again at Purdue. So they're going to lose to Ohio State most likely, just like Michigan may. I hate to say it, but
we'll get to that later. Come on, let us have
exactly.
this.
Yeah, they might have an opportunity. So, but it's nice to go into November with something to play for, right? And that's what the goal is. And now this is when championships are won and lost. For all intents and purposes, October 30th, close enough, man. You're here now. Take care of business.
Yeah, and Michigan factually will have something to play for in November, win or lose. And, it's not some sort of moral thing. I'm not saying go out there and lose and, you're fine. But you have that one-loss buffer in the Big Ten, especially when you still haven't played some of the teams that would be ahead of you that you can knock off, namely Ohio State. So there's still that opportunity there. There will be meaningful football in November. I want to talk about this Michigan State offense because it's an interesting one. And we were kind of talking after one of our press conferences this week with the assistant coaches, and you were bringing up, man, that third down conversion percentage, 100th in the country. I think it's 36% or something like that. But they make big plays. So it's like they're not totally consistent at moving the chains. We saw them go dormant against Nebraska and against Indiana as well. The two offenses they've played that are within the top 55 or 56 actually in the country, 240 yards, 250 yards respectively against those teams. So you're talking about that. But then they also have these weapons on the outside with Jaden Reed and Jalen Naylor and a quarterback in Peyton Thorne who throws a pretty deep ball. And then you have Kenneth Walker at the running back spot. He's second in the country in rushing. He's first in the country in yards after contact. So even if it's blocked for 2-3 yards, if you're not disciplined and in the right spot, he's going to go for more, and give him credit for that. He's been fantastic for them this season. What do you make of this Michigan State offense? Because it's kind of hard to get a huge grasp on it. And this is the best defense they're going to play. At the same time, this is by far, in my opinion, the best offense that Michigan's going to play defensively, and the first offense that Michigan's going to play that actually has a quarterback other than Caleb Ellaby for Western, but that was a MAC team, that can actually make some big-time throws down the field. Well, you look at Adrian Martinez, best quarterback they've played so far, but he does it a lot with his feet. A lot of his threat is that he can get out and run. So I think it's going to be a big test for a Michigan secondary as well that struggled last year against a different Michigan State quarterback, Rocky Lombardi.
Yeah, which was an embarrassment, and that was the, throw it up for grabs. And that's what you worry about, right? In a game like this is that, hey, are the corners going to be strong enough? How much of Dax Hill do we see and on which one of those speedy receivers? Because they've got a couple of them that can get behind you. And that's the big thing. If you get them into third down, they're rather pedestrian. But if Kenneth Walker goes off for big runs, or if they get some big plays in the screen game, they throw over the top and get some scores that way, then they're going to put some points on the board. But Indiana, Nebraska have both shut this Michigan State offense down for the most part. And it's not like it's a juggernaut out there. And it's not like Peyton Thorne has a ton of experience. This is going to be the best defense he's played all year. They're going to be designed to frustrate him and confuse him. Mike McDonald's done that to a lot of teams this year. Michigan is second in the country in scoring defense, and there have been like some garbage points in there too. So it's pretty crazy, how good they've been. And at the same time, they have not been tested by an offense with a great running back and a very good quarterback. And I think that's the first time this year that they're going to be playing with that such balance. So it's going to be interesting. And to me, it's all about limiting the big plays and then holding them to field goals if they do drive the field, and rather than letting them score touchdowns. That's going to be the key, in my opinion, in what should be a pretty close ball game.
I agree. Going to that Dax Hill point, it's interesting how they're going to use him. He's played less than 15 snaps this year anywhere other than either the slot, lining up at nickel, or at free safety. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if they use him out there. That worries me a little bit because he's just been so good at that kind of spot to kind of man the edge, and they've kind of been putting him and Hutchinson on the same side together and saying, hey, come this way. We're not going to have as many numbers over here, but we have two ridiculous athletes on this side of the field. It scares me a little bit if they take him out of the, play. And he has struggled a little bit in coverage. He's actually given up the most yards in coverage, I think, out of any Michigan defensive back. A couple big plays against Wisconsin, couple, great catches and things like that. But at the same time, the numbers are the numbers. I don't know how you're going to use him. But man, I do know this, that Mike McDonald, he said it to us. It might have been week 1. He obviously said very similar before the season, but he said we're going to have, a pretty small menu of things we're going to do for each game. But that menu is going to be different week to week, and you got to believe he talks about wrinkles a lot, when he talks to the media and all that. And you got to believe there's going to be a couple wrinkles. They had that bye week a couple weeks ago to kind of look at this Michigan State team as well before they refocused on Northwestern. And you got to believe there's a couple things there that we haven't maybe seen. So, yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Dax Hill starts playing out wide or whatever that they feel is the best for them.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be one of those things where they do it all game, but it could be a nice wrinkle and throw it in there and mix it up a little bit. So that's going to be critical to slow those receivers, because that is the one area. If you go back to, it's the same personnel, right? You've got the same guys on the field as you had last year. Vince Gray, DJ Turner's a little bit different, and they got skewered. They were put in bad positions once those guys got behind them, and there still will be opportunities. It's not going to be all press man, but there's still going to be opportunities for Michigan State to take their shots against these guys. It's just the way it is. It's football. You can't double one or the other, because I think they're both very capable guys. So to me, it's going to come down to a couple of things. There's been big plays at the beginning of the Nebraska game and the Northwestern game where they scouted something on film and they got a big play early to flip the field. And you can't have that. It's going to be whether it's a screen, whether it's misdirection, somebody that picking on the linebackers who have been sketchy in coverage at times this year. They've got to be ready for whatever comes at them. Michigan State's done like a flea flicker per game. Josh Ross loves to run downhill. Those safeties, Brad Hawkins going to have to be on top of his game. So you got to expect the unexpected in this game, without a doubt. I would expect we'll see some end arounds with the Spartans coming back the other way with their speedy backs or their speedy receivers. So there are weapons there, and they're going to bring out the heavy artillery for this game. This is everything to them. Great opportunity for them if they win this game. Obviously, they'd be right there in the mix for the Big Ten title, just like Michigan would be. So. And nobody expected that of them this year. So you got to tip the cap to them, what they've accomplished, and we'll see. This is basically one of those games that's it's a proving point for both teams to say, hey, we've done something now, because they haven't beaten a whole lot of other teams before this. Good teams anyway.
Mm-hmm. Eye discipline is going back to some of the misdirection stuff you talked about is going to be huge. Something that Steve Klinkscale keeps harping on his guys. You see it, them kind of mess up in that here and there when you look at, they get caught looking at the quarterback, and now, there's a wheel route that we didn't see or whatever it is. So they've got to be on that. And something that when you take a play like that away that Michigan State's been scheming up and making sure they've repped in practice all week, if you're there for some throwback screen or something like that and you're able to bottle that up or get a big hit, that can kind of, fuel your team and make them think, oh man, that was the one we thought we were going to hit on. So those are going to be big in a game like this, silence the crowd, all that sort of thing. We both picked Michigan wins. I have a 10-point victory. I think it's going to be close, but I think, I'm just kind of tired of picking like whatever the spread is, or like 3 points or 7 points. I think if Michigan wins, that they're the better team and they're probably going to win by 2 possessions. At the same time, Michigan State could very well win this game. You got Michigan by, I think, 4 points. Final thoughts on I guess why you chose that, and your confidence being a little bit more on the Michigan side of things.
I think Michigan's a better football team, honestly. I do. I think they've been playing together. I think you look at the defense and how well they've played. I don't think they're going to be giving up those big plays. And we'll see. The running game, to me, is a big positive in this game. How many times does the team with the better rushing total win this game? It's a ton. I think it's only a handful of times in the last 40 years or something like that hasn't been the case. And I understand that college football's evolved, but when it comes down to it, that's basically what makes the difference in a game like this. I like Michigan's chances there. I think that they're going to be harder to run on than Michigan State is. Let's put it that way. And if they can control the tempo, get some timely passes from Cade McNamara, who absolutely has to be better, then I think Michigan emerges victorious. I got 27-23. And it should be a fun one.
It should be. So we'll be there in East Lansing for all of your coverage. Visit thewolverine.com for all of that before the game, during the game, after the game. And stay tuned on Monday at thewolverine.com. You can just type that right into your browser. You'll find us for a special Inside the Fort football and basketball intel. Usually Inside the Fort Friday. We had one today, but we'll have another one Monday at thewolverine.com. We appreciate everybody being with us and enjoy the game.